So let's begin to discuss individual UML diagrams and look at each one carefully, including all the elements of the diagram. Now, we're going to predominantly worry about these 5 types of diagrams. The use case diagram, which is generally the first one you do, which is a dynamic view of the system. The class diagram, which is a static view. The sequence diagram, collaboration diagram, which are both dynamic, and the state diagram or state chart diagram, also dynamic. In addition to these 5, there are 4 others that are commonly used. The object diagram, which, not surprisingly, is an instantiation of the class diagram. The activity diagram, which is dynamic. The deployment and the component diagram. But let's begin with these. UML diagrams map different perspectives of the requirements of a system, both analysis requirements and design requirements. And a complete set of UML diagrams is the ultimate output that you try to achieve using a tool such as Visible Analyst. All of the elements in the individual diagrams, the diagrams have particular drawing elements, protocols. All of the elements and all of the relationships in the diagrams as a set are used to make a complete UML diagram set, and the diagram set represents a system. The visual effect of the UML diagram is the most important part of the entire process. All the other drawing elements in the diagrams are used to make it complete. So we begin with the use case diagram. A use case diagram is a set of use cases. A use case is a model of the interaction between external users of a software product that are called actors and the software product itself. More precisely, an actor, which is modeled as a stickman, is a user playing a specific role. Use case diagrams describe a set of user scenarios capturing the high-level user requirements. The purpose of a use case diagram is to capture the dynamic aspect of a system. However, some other diagrams do this as well, capture dynamic aspects such as activity, sequence, collaboration, and the state chart. So, how are use case diagrams different? Well, use case diagrams gather the requirements of a system, including internal and external influences. When a system is used to analyze and gather the functionalities, use cases are prepared and actors are identified. Use case diagrams are modeled to present the outside view, the outside perspective of who uses the system and how. So, in summary, the purposes of use case diagrams can be said to be these following points. 1, used to gather the requirements of a system. 2, used to get an outside view of a system. 3, used to identify the external and internal factors influencing the system. And 4, used to show the interaction among the requirements and the actors using the system. So here are the drawing symbols that are used in a use case diagram. The stickmen are actors. They are external entities. They can be people or they can be other systems that use the system. The box is the boundary of the system. That is, what's inside the box is part of the system itself. What is outside of the box is outside of the system, the users who are using the system. This is use case notation. Now, a use case itself is represented as an ellipse with a name inside of it. It may contain additional responsibilities. These use cases or ellipses do things. They are functionality-oriented, function-oriented. These are the main processes from a high level that the system must address. These are the responsibilities of the system to do things, to process information. So a use case is said to capture the high-level functionality of a system. Now, we mentioned the actor before, the actor notation. You can define an actor as an internal or external entity that interacts with the system. So actors are used in a use case diagram to describe the internal or external entities. And we see that on this slide. Actors, a role, not the person itself, a role that a person assumes that a user plays with respect to the system. They can be human users or they can be other systems, such as a robot, a thermostat, for example, in an air conditioning system. That would be an actor. It's some sort of external system that needs some information, some external system or person, role that a person plays. It needs some information from the current system. Now, the use case is the set of all scenarios describing an interaction between the user and a system, including alternative scenarios. The system boundary is the rectangle, then that represents the boundary between the actors and the system. Use case diagrams are considered for high-level requirement analysis of a system. When the requirements of a system are analyzed, the functionalities are captured in use cases. So use cases are nothing more than the system functionalities written in an organized manner. The second thing relevant to a use case are the actors. Actors can be defined as something that interacts with the system. There are also relationships between the use cases and the actors. Those lines that we saw going back and forth between the actors and the ellipses, the use cases or functionalities themselves. Use cases are drawn to capture functional requirements of a system. So, after identifying these above items, actors, use case, system boundary, we have to use the following guidelines to draw an efficient use case diagram. First, you have to name it, and the name is very important. The name should be chosen in a way so that it can identify the functionalities that are performed in the use case diagram. You have to have suitable name for actors. You have to show the relationships and the dependencies, which we haven't talked about yet. Those are the lines, the relationships are the lines between the actors and the use cases. You need to show those relationships and dependencies clearly in a diagram. You don't have to show all relationships, just the main ones, the important ones that help to identify the requirements. You can also, in Visible Analyst and other UML tools, you can attach notes. You can make little annotations, notes that you can attach to the actors, the relationships, or the use cases if it's relevant. So the association, we saw that, line between an actor and a use case. You can also have generalizations. And generalizations are the same thing that we talked about in class diagrams. That is, it indicates subclasses and superclasses. It indicates inheritance. The stickman, if it's a generalization between stickmen or actors, the stickman on the end of the arrow is the specific instance, is the more specific, specialized actor, and the actor on the arrow side is the general actor. So the inheritance flows from the arrowhead down, You have specialized associations, so-called include and extend. And we'll look at this in the next diagram. A dotted line labeled include, and they need to be labeled, it begins from the main use case, the base use case, The base use case is at this part, this end of the include, and the using use case, that is the use case that it uses, take a look, is at this end. This you use include when there's some chunk of behavior that's very similar and repeats in more than one use case. So rather than specify it again and again and again in all the separate use cases, you specify it once, and then you say, you draw this includes line from those repeating use cases to indicate that they assimilate, they include that particular behavior that gets repeated again and again. Extend is a little different. Extend is also an association like include, but extend, the arrow points to the base case. This is the base case. And the extension is an exception. There's some point within the base case where an exception might be triggered sometimes, not all the time. And you put that exception behavior at the end, at the base, at this end, at the non-arrowhead end of the extend. Okay, and you declare these with so-called extension points. What does that mean? Okay, well here's a simple form here's a simple example with include. So we have a system, it's a tax preparation software product system within the boundary. There's only one actor, the tax preparer, and there's only three main functionalities: prepare form 1040, prepare form 1040A, prepare form 1040EZ. There are steps that need to be performed within each of these ellipses, each of these use case functionalities, but all of them include this similar behavior, print tax form. So rather than repeat print tax form in the more detailed specification that we'll get to of each of these use case functionalities, we just place it in the use case once, and we say all of these base use cases include that. Here's kind of a busy use case diagram. It is both make appointment and request medication. Here's the make appointment part. Request medication and check patient record. So these are the three main use cases: make appointment, check patient record, request medication. This is the system inside the boundary, and we're calling the system, the use case system, clinic. We have four actors: patient, scheduler, doctor, and clerk. They interact with functionality in a different way. The patient has an association with make appointment, with request medication, with pay bill, and also with cancel appointment. The scheduler only has associations with make appointment and cancel appointment. The doctor has only a direct association with request medication. The clerk also has an association with pay bill. Note there's inheritance. Pay bill is a parent, is the superclass, more general class, to bill insurance. Okay, pay bill is a parent use case, and bill insurance is the so-called child, parent-child. There are extension points in pay bill. If they need more treatment, you extend to defer payment. Okay, there are include points. Both make appointment use case and request medication use case have this common functionality, checking the patient record. So they both include that repetitive, redundant functionality instead of specifying them separately in the more detailed steps that we haven't gotten to yet. Okay, so this illustrates all of the notation that is used in use cases. Plus, you can have notes. So there really aren't that many drawing symbols that are used, but they're very powerful. So that concludes our initial discussion of use case diagrams.